Hi everyone, Jesse here with eTrailer. Today we'll be taking a look at and I'll show you how to install the eTrailer custom fit base plate on our 2025 Jeep Wrangler. There's going to be 5 main components to look into when setting up your vehicle to be flat towed, starting with the base plate. That's going to be the structural mounting point for the towed vehicle to connect to the motorhome. And they connect through the second main component, which is going to be your tow bars. And that's just the physical link between the two. Then we have our safety cables here. These are here in case of a catastrophic disconnect. If anything here were to disconnect, these will be there to allow you to safely pull over to the side of the road. And we have our braking system. That's going to allow you to not only rely on the motorhome's brakes, but also the towed vehicle brakes, just to help you come to a safe, steady stop. And then we have our diode wiring. This is here to keep you safe and legal out there by sending a signal from the motorhome's taillights to the towed vehicle's taillights to allow all those to function properly. So that means turn signals, brake lights, and taillights. Here's what our base plate looks like when everything's hooked up and we're ready to tow. As you can see, it has some built-in safety cable loops that are pretty easy to access. Then we have our removable arms. This base plate will work with almost any tow bar out there on the market. Today we're using an older Blue Ox, but with some adapter arms, you can get it to adapt to almost any tow bar out there. Then we have the base plate itself did come with this bracket. I did have to modify it a bit. I put a couple bends in it just to make it look nice and clean. But that's a good mounting point for not only our 6-pole for our diode wiring, but also our breakaway switch for our braking system. Now when you've arrived at the campsite and you're ready to drive your towed vehicle around, getting unhooked is a pretty simple process. Of course, unplug your diode wiring and your breakaway cable, your safety cable. Then unhook from your tow bar. You just simply pull the tow bar's pin out. This is a little older, so it was fighting me, but slide the clip and pin out. And then, as I said, these arms are removable, so even though it does look pretty clean with it installed, you can always uninstall them. Simply pull your pin out, do a quarter turn, and that'll slide out. Then included in the kit is this plastic cap. That's going to keep any dirt or corrosion getting in there, just to make hooking up easier. As you can see, when it's unhooked, it's a nice clean look, and really it just looks like another aftermarket modification to your Wrangler. One thing worth mentioning, with our base plate on our neighbor's Wrangler, we had a height from the ground to our center pinhole of our base plate. It was 16.5 inches, and we have a motorhome that sits on the lower side. So what you want is to measure the height from the ground to the center of the pinhole on your receiver on your motorhome. And if it's within the 3-inch range that we like to use, then you won't need a high-low adapter. Our neighbor already had one and we were within the range, but that's just going to make it that much closer to those measurements being 0. As far as the installation process goes for base plates, this one is pretty easy. You will have to remove the bumper and do a little bit of trimming on your pan down here, but other than that, this is a pretty simple base plate. However, we also installed some other flat tow components at the same time, which most likely you will be doing also. So feel free to check out our dealer locator. You can find a local shop to you that would be happy to get this all set up for you if you just don't have the time, the space, or the tools to do it yourself. But if you are looking to see how this base plate gets installed, then just follow along and I'll walk you through the whole process. We'll begin our installation by removing 2 push pin fasteners up here behind our bumper. Kind of in a tight spot, so I'll just use this small pry bar, pop the center out, lift up on this plastic trim piece. Should pop out. One there and one over here. Now underneath the vehicle, we're going to be removing this skid plate here. So there's going to be 2 8mm bolts, one on each side. Then on the front of it, we'll have a bunch of push fasteners again. So just go down the line and get each one of those removed. These outside ones are kind of tricky to get to. You'll have to come around the back and just work them out the same way as the other ones. With all those popped out, we can take this off and set it aside. Now we'll have to reach up onto the backside of our bumper here. We're gonna have 4 18mm nuts to remove on both sides. So let's get our socket up in there and get those removed. We have 2 more bolts to remove. They're going to be on the outside of the bumper here. You'll see this bracket, and then there will be a 16mm bolt. One other thing I should mention is you can slide these brackets out now, or they'll just fall to the ground whenever you take the bumper off. But I'll set that aside, and we'll pull out on our bumper. Don't pull the bumper out too far or hard because you will have to disconnect this electrical connector here. There's a yellow tab, pop it out, and then this gray tab will push up. And then it will separate, and now we can set our bumper aside. We need to take our washers in our kit, and we'll actually end up taping them to the back side of our outside holes on this support bracket. So I'm just going to use some painter's tape, get it wrapped around there on the top hole and also the bottom hole. And you just want to make sure that the washer is lined up with your hole. And then take a screwdriver and poke that hole out so we can run our hardware through it. Now to make things easier, you'll want an extra set of hands. I have my good friend Matt here to help me. But what we'll do is just kind of angle this so that we can slide it into place, and be careful not to hit your washers. We'll want to get this slotted hole lined up here, and we'll get our bolt, same bolt that we took off from there, get that started so it'll hold it in place. Next, we'll put some blue thread locker onto our bolt just to have it ready. We'll have a bolt and this handle nut. You'll want to line it up with this hexagonal hole here. Just to make it easier, I'm going to take a pair of pliers and bend this little skid pan out of our way. We can bend it back later, but this does have a curve to it, so it makes it pretty easy to work around the frame. You may have to move your base plate around to get it lined up. We'll get that threaded on. We'll do that on both sides. Now we're going to leave all of our hardware loose for now because we'll mount everything up and then tighten it down. So next up, we'll be trimming out some holes for our base plate to go through this air dam that we took off. You'll have some templates in your instructions. Just cut those out. And then the center line will match up to this little convex piece here. And we'll take a drill bit and drill out the 4 corners of the template. Now I'll come in with a multi-tool. You could also use a Dremel or something like that, but we'll just cut along these lines and cut out our rectangles. Next up, we will be installing our safety cables. So what you want to do is just wrap it around a sturdy piece of frame on the vehicle and then also around the base plate. So I just went up above our sway bar bushing here around our frame. That's going to hold tight. And I looped it around the base plate just to take out some of the slack. And now what I'll do is zip tie this up just so this quick link is not hitting against any metal. So I'll just zip tie it up here, and that'll keep it from clanking when we're driving down the road. Before we install our bumper, we'll actually have to install our air dam first, just because with this base plate here, it's going to be very difficult to install. So I'll just slide it over our base plate, and then I'll get the 2 bolts loosely threaded on just so it holds it in place. And with those brackets, if you bent them, you'll probably have to bend them back just to get everything to line up. Now we can slide our bumper, slide the studs through the holes, get it to line up. And don't forget to plug in your harness on this side. So I did take this plug off of its holder just because the base plate was making the wires stress a bit. So what I'll do is once everything's hooked up, I'll just zip tie it up somewhere, that way it's not moving around. Now we can install the factory nuts on the back side of our bumper. Just make sure to add some blue thread locker. Also, I took out the bolts that we loosely installed earlier and put some thread locker on those. But I'll just get each of these installed and then we can tighten them down. Our new bolts will be 19 millimeters. Take a torque wrench and go over all of our hardware, make sure it's torqued down to the specification in the instructions. Now I did have to trim our air dam just a little more, and I'll come back through and clean up my cut, but just to get those push pins to reinstall up there, I had to trim it out a little more. And then I moved on to our 6-pole and breakaway bracket. This is included with the kit. It's not super simple to install. I actually ended up bending it, then self-tapping it up with some spacers just to bring it down for clearance with the bumper. And then after that, I drilled a hole for my wiring to run through with a step bit. Once you get that all set up, really that's about going to do it for our look at and installation of the eTrailer custom fit base plate on our 2025 Jeep Wrangler.